Have a listen to this. Have a listen to this.
Now, that kind of talk this week dragged Australia's share market to a two-year low. There are, of course, complex reasons for that.
He was the big spender. The big spender.
Doing the grocery shopping could take a huge chunk out of the family budget.
And that's finance.
Hello and welcome to Comedian versus Economist. We demystify the world of money and help you get a handle on the bigger picture. My name's Adam and we're joined as always by my little older brother and real-life economist, Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Yeah, g'day, Adam. How you going?
I'm excellent. We are coming to you today from the Equity Mates studios here in Sydney as we gear up for Finfest this weekend, which somewhat anticlimactically will have already happened by the time you're listening to this. But we're very much looking forward to it. And as you know, we love having guests on our podcast, and we're lucky enough today to be joined by none other than the CEO of Equity Mates, Alec Renahan. Ren, welcome.
Thanks, boys. Great to be here. Don't tell Bryce that you called me the CEO. He likes to claim that title. But it's great to be here. I'm a big fan, and I feel like I get a front row seat to just watch you guys work.
Sit back and watch the magic.
Yes.
You're in for a treat. This is actually the first time that we've ever recorded live, Ren, but it's also actually the first time Thomas and I have ever recorded in the same room together. So we're normally on other sides of the country. So it's exciting.
You're nothing what I thought you'd look like from the sound of your voice.
Are you guys as funny when you're in the same state? That's the question.
All I had were those pictures of you from when you were 12. All right, big show coming up. We're going to be taking a look at what's going on with Aussie house prices. Are the early COVID predictions of a 30% drop finally coming true? We're going to be chatting some stonks with Ren and seeing what company results can tell us about the big picture. And a pub in Ireland is battling the energy crisis by offering a 20% chill count. I think they tried to make a clever play on the word discount there. I think if we're just making up words, I would have gone with DAT count, because all you need to know is it's 20% off. It doesn't matter if it's discount or DAT count. But first, fears the Bank of England could be losing customers, which is pretty bad because it only has 4. Thomas, what's going on at the Bank of England?
What are the Bank of England's customers?
England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Oh, clever. Right. So
they're really running fine margins when it comes to customers.
Yeah.
And they haven't gained any new customers in years.
Yeah.
They need to work on their customer acquisition.
Yeah, customer acquisition costs gone up a lot since we went off colonialism. Yeah, I mean, this is another one of these cases where we take 2 weeks off and things go to poo.
The world exploded.
Yeah, you guys missed a big 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a big 2 weeks. Yeah. Well, the financial system almost collapsed is sort of how the Economist magazine was sort of saying. It's interesting. They're saying it's a high stakes game of financial stability chicken that the Bank of England's playing. So there's a lot of pieces of this puzzle and it's kind of hard to sort of know where to start. But basically the pension funds really got into trouble. The Bank of England had to step in and bail them out. As we speak, they're still bailing them out, but Governor Bailey has announced that they're going to stop bailing them out tomorrow, I think.
That's a mouthful in itself. Governor Bailey's doing the bailout. It's tough. Yeah. Why are the Bank of England bailing them out? Like, what happens if the pension funds go under?
Oh, well, yeah, no, that's not good.
That's the financial crisis we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, what happens if your superannuation fund goes under?
Yeah, could be back in the black at least.
I've got to say, though, the whole financial system almost collapsed. I feel like we've lived through like 4 almost collapses in the last decade.
Yeah.
GFC almost collapsed. COVID probably almost collapsed. China, remember last year, the property market, was there a contagion there? Was going to almost collapse.
I don't think
it's like a yearly occurrence now.
That story hasn't even finished, has it? The China story.
No.
That's still going.
Yeah, there's always something. I mean, my entire career as an economist, there's always been something happens, and it's sort of like, and then you sort of navigate around it and things are okay, and then the next crisis hits. But we live in like a highly leveraged financial system, which means that it's risky and stuff goes wrong.
Plenty for us to talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a great time to be running a macroeconomics podcast, it's fair to say. So what was happening with the pensions? The hedging operations didn't quite go as well as they planned?
So let's just step back a bit. So the context here is that through COVID, we had quantitative easing where the Bank of England's printing money and pumping into the system. The mechanism for that is that they're buying bonds from the government. The government gives them bonds. The Bank of England gives them cash, the cash goes into the system, and that's how you print money. They then announced that as inflation got out of control, that we're going to go to quantitative tightening. So that means the reverse. So rather than buying the bonds, they're going to be selling the bonds. And at this point, the bond market sort of is on high alert because like we haven't ever successfully navigated quantitative tightening really. Like you remember like the taper tantrum in 2013-14 was about when the Fed was going to scale back its bond purchases. So like just dial back quantitative easing a little and markets freaked out. We're now talking about quantitative tightening. And so bond markets are on edge. So that's going on. That's the context. The British government then comes in and says, we're going to cut taxes and we're going to increase spending and we're going to take on £65 billion of debt, and we've not got no real plan to fund it other than selling bonds. So the bond market's like looking at the Bank of England going, oh, they're going to start selling bonds. How's this going to go? And then from the sidelines, the government comes in and goes, oh, we're going to sell a crap load of bonds too.
So there's just one guy inside the Bank of England just buying and selling his own bonds. Like he's just like, he's on one computer like sell, and then moves to the next one like buy.
Well, yeah, well, that was the thing about like why the government's plan seemed a little ridiculous is because the Bank of England was trying to tighten, and then they got a policy which asked them to sort of buy bonds, or not necessarily the Bank of England had to buy the bonds the government was selling, but the government was selling bonds into a market that was already worried if there's too much selling pressure, which pushes down prices, pushes up yields. So that's happening. So that sort of created, and then the pound collapsed and all that stuff we talked about that last time. And then you've got the pension funds, and the pension funds have been worried about the low interest rate environment. So they've got these liabilities coming up. So long down the future, they've got all the pensions that they've got to pay. So they have these long duration liabilities that they're sitting on, but they're in a low interest rate world. And so they've been worried, how do we come up with the money to cover our liabilities? And one of the things they did is they then hedged against those long-term liabilities, and they set up these liability-driven investments, which did that through gilt, through the government bonds. But then they did that in a really leveraged way. So they would buy the bonds, like they'd have $100, buy $100 worth of bonds. They'd have the bond. They'd then take it to another party, like take it to you, and go like, can I give you this bond? And I promise, it's a repo, so I promise to buy it back later. You go, yeah, sure, here's $100. They then took that $100 and then bought another bond.
Right.
And then did the same, then repoed it.
Sounds
got
like
the
a
cash.
Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, what?
Little bit.
Okay.
So this is what they're sort of realizing, and that's how they were hedging their long-term liabilities by leveraging bonds in the here and now.
Right.
But then the bond prices like blew out of the water when the government stepped in. The pension funds set up these LDIs, the liability-driven organisations, and their sole function, they're worth something like £2 trillion, so it's a big industry, but their sole function is to manage this hedging through, and so
you had one job.
So their holdings, the values of the bonds that they held, which were highly leveraged, halved in 4 days.
Right.
Wow.
With this blowout.
Yeah.
And because they're leveraged, they're on margin calls. So the people that they've repoed to are like, oh, you need to come up with more cash because you're over leveraged. And so they've got to sell into a market that's collapsing.
Yeah, right.
And so that created this dynamic, and what the Bank of England called it a self-reinforcing fire sale dynamic in the bond market.
Oh, okay. What? Because they had to sell at discounted prices, and then that created more selling pressure, which dropped prices more.
Yeah.
Right. If there's one player in the financial system I don't want doing these things, it's my retirement fund.
Yeah.
How are they the only ones doing this?
This is the thing, like, they talk about the hedging, like, did the hedging work? The hedging worked because their long-term liability shifted as interest rates went up, so that their problem in the long run disappeared because interest rates were going up. So, because it's assets matching liabilities, so as their liabilities fell, their assets fell in the short term as well. So the hedging worked. Mathematically, the hedging worked.
Okay. Oh man, of course it did. There'd just be these economists in the go, I'm telling you, it worked.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly as we planned.
Why is the government giving us 3 days to fix it then if it works?
Their net position was okay over the long run, but their short-term position, their gross leverage in the short run was a total mess. And so like the hedging did what it was supposed to do, but gross leverage was what mattered, not net leverage. And that's where they got into trouble. And that's what Gerard Minak was saying is saying like, this is actually kind of scary because like a lot of people who thought they were covered now realize they're actually massively exposed.
So is it fixed now? Like, is the financial system okay? Or where are we at right now? So this is Friday the 14th of October.
Like a couple of days ago, the Bank of England, they said they pulled an all-nighter. They pulled 2 all-nighters in a row to try to come up with a plan.
What are they, like a startup? They'll be telling them when we finally grow into a proper bank, we'll be looking back on this time where we pulled all the staff together and pulled an all-nighter.
That's right, they just bought in some pizzas. But then they pulled 2 all-nighters in a row, and then all they could come up with is like, maybe we just need to buy some bonds.
Right.
And so they started buying bonds, which is probably the fairly obvious solution. But they've been buying $5 billion a day worth of bonds. So like, it's not pocket change.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 3 days, and that seemed to settle the market. But then the Governor Bailey saying we're out. Like you got 3 days, saying to the pension funds, you got 3 days to tidy house, and then we're out. We're not buying anymore. So you need to sort this out. And so everyone's like, oh, what happens when those 3 days end? Like, and then there's conflicting reports because like his head staff are briefing governor ministers saying, no, we're going to keep going.
And can't the pension funds just call the bluff anyway? Just go, well what are you going to do if we don't fix it in 3 days?
Well,
you bailed us out last time. Because you can't afford can't afford us to go under, so maybe we just won't.
Yeah, and
your problem, your move, government. Could be time for another all-nighter.
Yeah. Well, this is the hard spot that he's in. That it's a moral hazard dynamic that gets created if you just keep bailing them out whenever they poorly manage leverage. Yeah. And to be fair, like I think like they were doing industry best practice of how you should hedge your liabilities.
The industry needs to lift then.
Yeah.
So is today the day? Friday is the final of the 3 days?
Yeah, I think so.
It might be time zone adjusted.
So
We're looking tonight, maybe.
Yeah.
So by the time this is released on Monday,
well, no, we go out Wednesday. Yeah.
Oh, this is out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
England might not have an economy anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, if England is on fire when you're listening to this, then it didn't go well.
Yeah, but surely it's like you're so far down the garden path, you're buying $5 billion worth of bonds a day, you keep buying.
Yeah, but I mean, this is also the other thing, is they're trying to tighten. So you've got inflation running at 10%. You've promised the market that you're going to tighten. You promised that you weren't going to be buying bonds.
Yeah.
But now you're being forced to buy bonds while you're still trying to maintain a commitment to selling bonds to try to bring down inflation and raise interest rates.
And is this all because of the tax cut policy?
I think probably you look at that tax cut policy, like it was reasonably big, and it did require a lot of debt, which required selling bonds. So that was the sort of the shift that threw markets. So they thought the government was going to try and bring down debt. The government turned around and said, no, we're going to massively increase debt. We're going to have to sell a lot more bonds. And the market went, okay, wasn't ready for that. Didn't think that was going to come. And that's what threw everything into a tailspin.
So I feel like then maybe Liz Truss wins the award for worst start to a prime ministership ever.
Yeah.
I think it would be hard pressed to come up with the worst start.
Worst start, and possibly also winning shortest term.
Yes.
I feel like that's on the cards as well.
Yeah, I love it. Kwarteng, who's the Chancellor, came out and said, acknowledged that it had caused a little turbulence. Yeah. I mean, Liz Truss is now, like, she campaigned for the leadership promising to fight Treasury orthodoxy and the department's abacus economics. So I guess abacus economics is where things actually add up.
Yeah.
Properly. It's like,
Yeah.
nah,
She's fighting it.
fighting it. Yeah.
It's the new world order, baby. We're not adding anything up anymore. All right, so is Liz Truss and the government changing tack now or what?
They were planning to cut the tax marginal tax rate. That's now off the table.
Right.
But everything else is still on there. I mean, the interesting thing is they didn't get the office of.
Hang on, the tax cuts policy they've revised now to not include tax cuts.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. There's
It's just back to just being called a policy now.
They were also ending the cap on banker bonuses
Yeah.
because if there's one thing that we really need, it's our bankers to get bigger bonuses.
Yeah.
So that's still
suffered
in
too
there, I
long.
guess.
I think that's still there. Yep. The cut to the basic tax rates there.
Right.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that Kwasi Kwarteng announced this without any detail. So it was like a budget without any of the numbers. It was just like, this is the headlines, this is what we're going to do without any of the numbers. And everyone's like, where are the numbers?
Sounds
And
like
he's
a press release.
Yeah, it was a press release.
He wasn't holding an abacus at the time. He was like, we're not using this right now.
Yeah, and everyone's like, well, where's the numbers? He's like, oh, I'm going to give them to you in late November. Everyone's like, and then the markets collapsed. And everyone's like, you should probably bring that forward. So he's brought it forward to October 31st, which if you're looking for an announcement that's not going to spook markets, Halloween probably isn't the date you want to be launching that.
Right, Thomas, house prices. Can Ren buy a house yet?
Oof, not yet.
Oh, come on.
Hang tough.
Maybe once you become actual CEO.
Bryce is pretty settled there. It could be a while.
So the RBA hiked rates another 25 bips in October. That was against expectations of 50. So it does suggest that maybe we're coming to the end of the hiking cycle, perhaps a little earlier. But we have had the most aggressive hike cycle since 1994. We've got 250 bips in 6 months. So that's fast and aggressive. Yeah, so now the cash rate 2.6, highest since July 2013. The average discount mortgage rate. Average
Discount variable mortgage rate.
Hey,
There we go.
There you go. 5.95%. That's the highest since September 2012.
I get a letter. It feels like once a month now from the bank. Hey, your mortgage is going up. I'm like, nice.
Yeah, you know the RBA meets every month.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But it becomes really real when the letter arrives.
Yeah.
It's not even an email. I should sign up for email notifications.
So, I mean, this is having impact. So, on your average $500,000 mortgage, every 25 basis points adds $75 a month to the mortgage bill. So, 250 bips gives you $750 a month or $9,000 a year. So, the average household is now coming up with an extra $9,000 a year on their mortgage.
Wow.
Which is
Massive.
Yeah. That's going to have an impact, and it lowers borrowing capacity. So PropTrack came out and they reckon that the average home buyer can now borrow 21.6% less than they could pre the rate hikes kicking off. Yeah. So if they could borrow 500,000 in April, they can now borrow 392,000.
I thought you meant if they could buy a 4-bedroom house in April, they can now only buy a 3-bedroom house. Small study.
Well, yeah, I guess it translates, doesn't it? Yeah.
So if you include the deposit, then you get 18%. So that should give us the ceiling of how far you'd expect prices to fall on the back of what we've seen already in terms of rate hikes.
Yeah.
So you think house prices are going to fall 20%?
No.
Oh, okay. I was saying, this is great.
Yeah.
Probably not for you two, but for me.
Why don't you shut up?
So house prices are now down. We're down 5.5%. They were down 1.6% in September, which is pretty hefty monthly fall. But we're only down 5.5% in total. That's after 25.5% on the way up. So it's pretty.
Yeah, I was going to say because
muted.
it went up gangbusters, right?
Yeah.
It's just going up. So it's got to come off a bit.
Well, it kind of has to come off a bit, but the property market typically tends to ratchet. So you have these big increases and then a small decrease. And because what happens is
that's ratcheting. Yeah, I heard the term, never really seen it. This is the benefit of being live together in the studios. I can see your fist making the ratchet sort of move.
All right, yeah.
which hasn't translated at all well on a podcast. But
Just want to describe
for
it
the
so
listeners-
people really get it?
for the listeners out there, just rest assured that I now understand it slightly better thanks to Thomas's fist movements.
Typically, the property market ratchets, and it's because people don't need to sell. Like when prices start to fall, most people just sort of hang on to it. They don't sell, and prices typically don't fall unless you get forced sales, and that only happens in a deep recession. Once you got unemployment and people can't afford their mortgage repayments, and you get forced sales, that's when you get like significant decline. So if you're going to get like a 20%, you're going to have to see your unemployment get quite a way higher, and to get that for sale dynamic. And if you actually look at the total property listings at the moment, it's flatlining. So it typically around now you get this what they call the spring selling season, and listings lift because it's spring and it's a good time to go to auction or whatever. But at the moment it's flatlining because people are like, oh, I'm not getting the prices that I want. I'm just going to hold. The other reason that they're holding is that rents, particularly if you're looking at investing, rents are growing at 10% a year. Wow. Vacancies are at 0.9%, which is the lowest level on record. Just crazy low. You think about 3% being a balanced market. They're at 0.9% now. So it's like super tight. There's huge rental pressure. Rental prices are growing up. So if you're a property investor, and it's more the investing class tends to sell first because they're more leveraged and they've got a home, so it's just an asset. Whereas if you're selling the family home, that's a big story. So
you're not panic selling your house.
No.
Sorry, Anna.
Free up some liquidity to put in the stock market.
Yeah, which is also going down.
Yeah. So for that investing class, their repayments are going up, but rents are going up as well. And so then they're not feeling a lot of pain yet.
I am looking for a rental at the moment, and I can attest it is brutal out there. Right. Yeah, 60 people lining up trying to look at an apartment. Yeah, it's not how you want to spend a Saturday.
Yeah, no, you got to get out of this studio, mate. The bed over there is looking pretty. it's not a good look for a professional company.
The rent Bryce charges me is okay though. It did go up 10%.
All right, why don't we take a short break here, grab a quick word from this week's sponsors, and be back with more Comedian versus Economist right after this. Welcome back here on Comedian versus Economist. We would love it if you left us a preferably glowing review wherever you get your podcast. That would help us out enormously. But we're joined by Ren from Equity Mates Media. And Ren, you've been keeping your eye, as you do, across company results both here and abroad. Love to get your thoughts on what that might tell us for the bigger picture, for the macro picture.
Yeah, well, I feel out of my depth here. I feel Thomas can probably do a better job, but hey, I'm happy to sit in and give it a crack.
Don't talk to him then, talk to me. And you will quickly feel like an expert.
We're learning a lot from company results, but I think what I'm taking away most of all is that the numbers aren't really matching up with the words at this stage. And in Australia, we get results every 6 months in general. Yep. So a few companies buck that trend. Qantas reported last week as you're listening, this week as we're recording. So we'll talk about that in a sec. But if we go back to sort of August when all of the Australian companies were reporting, it really was a moment where everyone was saying things were getting bad or going to get bad, but the numbers were pretty okay. And even the sectors that were, I guess, most exposed to the consumer, those discretionary retailers, the first things we stop buying when inflation's high, our job's at risk and money's tight, they were all doing well, JB Hi-Fi reported, like 4% revenue rise, 8% profit rise. They raised their dividend by 43%. That's not the actions of a discretionary retailer when things were bad. They did warn us that things were going to get bad, but the numbers didn't really show it.
Is this the war chest of savings that people have that I keep hearing about? Are we still just working through that?
That's probably a Thomas question more than me.
Potentially. I mean, we were hearing a lot about that. There's a big question about how evenly distributed it was across the population. But saying a lot of that war chest was concentrated in high income earners. Maybe people are flush.
Yeah, but I think the big story was the commodity story, and mining companies just had a absolute bumper reporting season. And you guys have been talking about high commodity prices, and that really flowed through to company results. BHP, 30 billion, 31 billion US billion in profit, second largest profit ever for them. Fortescue, massive profit. Even all the coal companies, Whitehaven, their profit was up 450%. Oh, yeah. So, like iron ore, coal, oil, they all had great halves.
And is that a war in Ukraine story? Is that like a energy crisis shock type story?
Yeah, inflation, all of that. Yeah.
Sure, the mining industry now accounts for more profits than the entire rest of the Australian economy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Not a buy, hold, sell recommendation. No. It sounds like a pretty good place to put your money.
Yeah, maybe we should have got into the mining industry as a career recommendation.
Yeah.
But we're sort of in this wait and see period now in Australia. We'll get February next year, we'll get the first half of financial year 23 results, and we'll really see what this period we're living through now has been like. But over in the States, they never stop reporting. They report every 3 months. So you get a constant stream of data from them. And again, what we're seeing and literally this week as we're recording, we started seeing Q3 results. And again, what we're seeing is a lot of talk about things being really bad, but the numbers actually being okay. And if we start with Pepsi, because I think Pepsi, it gives us a good indication again of like the consumer, what they're spending. They beat expectations on revenue. They beat expectations on profit. Revenue was up 9%, which, feels pretty good, despite them actually selling less stuff. So I think Pepsi's a really good indication of the inflation story.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that because a lot of companies will blame inflation for price rises, but then tack on a little extra. So they're not just covering inflation. They're kind of like, inflation plus a little bit because it's easily justified to increase your prices. So while we're increasing, we might as well just skim some off the top.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if it was volume decline across everything, but there was a lot of volume decline, but revenue stayed strong. And that's an inflation story. I don't know if they're putting on a little extra or not, or they're just passing on true costs. But I think that is a clear example of inflation. But the two results that I think we should really focus on, because if I think about the last 3 months, it was that airlines are terrible.
Yeah.
They're losing bags, they're cancelling flights, worse, on-time percentage, all of that. People who travelled to Europe, unfortunately I wasn't one of them, they had a terrible time. Well, I'm sure they had a great time once they got there. But the airlines, amongst all the difficulties, amongst all the staffing shortages, looks like they've knocked it out of the park.
Wow.
So Qantas, they announced a 1.3 billion pre-tax profit they expect to post a 1.3 billion pre-tax profit for the back 6 months of the year, a return to profitability, and that is from about a $2 billion loss last year. So a multi-billion-dollar turnaround for Qantas, despite losing bags.
Well, they were able to cut costs by only handling every second bag.
But they fired all their ground staff and then paid overs to get more people in on short-term contracts. So anyway, despite all of that, Qantas is having a pretty good financial time.
Presumably also they were under the pump though because people wanted to travel. So the whole reopening story, they obviously didn't have enough resources, but at the same time, huge demand, presumably. So I know everyone I know is going somewhere. I mean, we're in Sydney right now.
Yeah.
I guess as long as they can kind of sort of keep up with it, they're going to smash it.
Yeah. And I think the prices of flights have got pretty ridiculous as well. Yeah. But over in the States, Delta, they reported a record profit for the quarter, $14 billion, $700 million profit. But I think the really interesting thing is, these numbers are higher than the same quarter in 2019. So COVID happened, everything shut down.
Yeah.
They weren't flying, they were getting bailed out. Then the reopening happens, everyone's traveling, they're losing bags, they're cancelling flights. But despite all of the turmoil of the last 3 years, from a revenue point of view, higher than where they were in 2019.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
So I don't know what that tells us about the economy, but thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the airline version of Karen's Diner. Have you seen that? Where you just get terrible service and people somehow enjoy being yelled at and constantly disappointed with their service.
I guess
maybe airlines are just piggybacking off that, going, you know what, this is just the new paradigm for us.
Is there a business opportunity in that where you really lean into it and it's Karen's Airline?
Karen's Airline.
Yeah, and it's we'll treat you terribly, but it's part of the brand.
It's part of it. All right, Thomas, finally on the show, a pub in Ireland has a novel approach to dealing with the energy crisis. What's going on there?
Yeah, Doyle's Corner Pub in Ireland, in Dublin, announcing a 20% discount on food if you come in and just deal with the cold because they're not putting on the heating.
I don't think that's quite how they phrased it in their promotional material.
Deal with the cold.
Deal with the cold. They call it. Yeah.
Shut up and deal with it.
Deal with it. Yeah. And then bring your coat. They say bring your coat. We're turning the heat down. Chill with us every Tuesday in October. Bring your coat and get a 20% discount off food.
Bring your coat. Brilliant. I wonder if that extends to hoodies. Do you reckon? Something tells me if you rocked up to a traditional Irish pub wearing an hoodie, like I don't know, like avocado pictures or something. I don't reckon you'd last too. You wouldn't get the discount. I don't think you would last too long in the pub.
Part of their story, the big spending is supporting the economy. The Irish government's doing the same. They've got a 1.25 billion euro temporary business energy support scheme. So each business, you can get 10,000 euro a month to offset energy bills per business. So
right.
It's pretty massive. That said, energy prices were up 49% in October.
Wow.
According to comparison website bonkers.ie.
Where we get all our macro news from here on the CVE. It costs a lot for the monthly Bonkers subscription, but I think you'll agree, totally worth it.
Finger on the pulse with that data.
I did see that they said a bag of coal has gone up from 16 euro to 33 euro. So...
Right.
Yeah.
A bag of coal.
A bag of coal.
Who's buying coal in bags these days?
I don't know. Like that, I think someone tweeted it in response to the Doyle's pub tweet. They're like, yeah, because like a bag of coal is going to have this really specific price. I don't know what that tells us, but yeah. So
right.
Naughty kids this year, I guess, if you're hoping for a lump of coal in the Christmas stocking. Cha-ching.
Cash it in.
I reckon they missed a trick too. This pub by telling people to bring their own coat, because have you heard of the alcohol coat? You know, the coat that you kind of get after, like if they just said like we'll give you a free alcohol coat with your 12th whiskey. Like
That's not bad.
What's an alcohol coat?
An alcohol coat. It's like we've had so much to drink, you don't feel the cold anymore.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So they could have just offered...
That could get confusing though. People might think they're getting free booze out of it. You'd have to have a very clear disclaimer.
Yeah. It comes with the purchase of your 12th whiskey.
Yeah.
That's when you get given the. You can even be like money back if you can't remember like. If you remember being cold when you left, we'll give you your money back. I don't remember leaving.
Hot air rises, so if you're rolling around on the floor, that's going to be the warmest part of the pub.
Brilliant. Alec, thank you for joining us on CVE. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Alec.
Yeah. And if you do like the show, or if you got questions for us, you can send us an email, cve@equitymates.com, or go and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. But for us, it's bye for now.
Comedian V Economist is a product of Equity Mates Media. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Comedian V Economist are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the Equity Mates website, where you can find ASIC resources and find a registered financial professional near you. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media and the hosts of Comedian V Economist acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.